I'll come to Jharkhand after that. At 5 p.m. on the 20th, the turnout in Maharashtra was deemed to be 58.22%. By 11:30 p.m. on the same day, it had increased to 65.02%. Before counting on the 23rd, it had gone up yet again to 66.05%. This means that the turnout increased by 7.83%. That's such an astonishing figure. I'm going to repeat it for the audience. That the turnout increased between 5 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. by an astonishing 7.83%. That's such a huge increase in terms of the number of people. Can you start by estimating for me how many people that would actually be?
Karan, from 5 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. 5 p.m. there was a figure of 58.22. And 58.22, the gross number would be 5 crore 64 lakhs 88,024. By 11:30 p.m., that percentage has gone up to 65.02, which gross figure would be 6 crore 30 lakhs 85,732. Between 5 p.m. and 11:30 p.m., the total hike in gross number is 65 lakhs 97,708. In other words, about 66 lakhs. But the hike doesn't end there. Just a few hours before the counting, again, there was an increase of 9 lakhs 99,359. That's almost about 10 lakhs. All put together, from 5 o'clock on the 20th to 11:30 p.m. on the 20th, and a few hours, 12 hours before counting, the total increase was 75 lakhs 97,067. That's about 76 lakhs.
That is such an astonishing figure that it bears underlining for the sake of the audience. What the Election Commission is asking us to believe is that between the formal close of polls at 5 p.m. on the 20th and the last voting that happened at 11:30 p.m. on the 20th night, an additional almost 76 lakh people voted. That is such a difficult figure for most people to believe. They would turn around and say it's unbelievable. Isn't it very hard to swallow?
Yes. If you look at the historical data, Karan, never ever we had, the Election Commission announces a provisional figure at 5 o'clock. But then the final count is given a few hours later, because there may be people who are waiting on the premises and they are all allowed to vote. After that is also done, finally in the night, they give you the final figure. Historically, the discrepancy or the difference between the provisional figure and the final figure has never ever crossed 1%. It has always been under 1%. Now, today we are in a situation where between the provisional figure and the final figure, it is 7.83%. Gross figure is about 76 lakh votes.
Let's take up the point you made that after polls officially close at 5 p.m., if there are still people waiting on the premises or in the compound, they are permitted to vote because they arrived there before polls closed. Let's, for argument's sake, purely for argument's sake, assume that there were 1,000 people waiting in the compound to vote. Each of them arrived before 5 p.m., so each of them would have a right to vote. Now, let's assume that it takes 1 minute per person to vote. Actually, it takes a lot longer. It takes around 4 or 5 at least. But let's, for argument's sake, assume it takes 1 minute per person to vote. That means those 1,000 people waiting to vote would take 1,000 minutes to do so. And 1,000 minutes is 16.6 hours. But the problem is that between 5 p.m. and 11:30 p.m., there's only 6.5 hours. So even in the 6.5 hours available for extra voting, that 1,000 simply could never have voted. And if the 1,000 could never have voted, how on earth could 76 lakh have done so? So my question is a simple one. How is this huge increase of nearly 8% to be accounted for? Does the Election Commission give any explanation, or are they silent?
Karan, there is one more impossibility here. You know, a booth across India, on an average, has about 1,000 and 1,200 votes, between 1,000 and 1,200 votes. If after polls closed, if 1,000 people voted, as you said, 16 hours it takes, if that is the case, does it mean that throughout the day nobody voted? But the Election Commission says that 58.22% have voted. That's one. The second thing is the Election Commission's own manual says that, people who have entered the premises, and the doors will have to be closed, the gate will have to be closed, and the last person waiting will be given a slip bearing number 1. And the closest person to the booth is given the last number. So that, there are no more additions after the gates are closed. Just to take it. And the whole process will have to be videographed. And all these slips will have to be deposited. Now, when people like us ask, where is the videograph? Election Commission doesn't say anything. Election Commission doesn't give you any explanation. Not only here, even during Lok Sabha elections, we found a lot of discrepancies, but no answer is forthcoming from the Election Commission.
You're making a very good point, Dr. Parakala. In addition